Again, Shabbat Shalom, everyone.
Shabbat Shalom.
And just a couple announcements. I was hoping to be able to teach at least the Torah portion next week before I went to Bozeman, but this morning found out that Shadrach's plane gets in a little earlier than we thought. And we got to take a car to the airport in Great Falls because we're going to be going to Billings next Shabbat and meet our son and family.
Bozeman.
In Bozeman. And then we got to take a car to Great Falls because our daughter's flying in on the 4th of July and granddaughter. Well, our granddaughter and friend are going to fly into Bozeman. They change their schedule, but our daughter's flying in on the 4th. So we got to leave a car up there. We're staying in Billings or Bozeman until the 5th and coming back. And so there's just no way unless we did the Torah portion in the morning, whatnot. But and so having said that, the following weekend is Sandy's mom's memorial. We'll be doing that. So we'll be gone. Won't be doing it that day either. And so kind of one of those things where life catches up with you sometimes. But anyway, so we'll be back a week after the 8th, whatever day that is. But, and so anyway, starting in the book of Numbers, chapter 16, and the Torah portion is called Korach. That's the name of the guy, and believe it or not, the word Korach means bald, of all things. And no offense, Jim. Anyway, so Numbers chapter 16, verse 1 and 2. Now Korach, the son of Ichar, the son of Kahat, the son of Levi, with Datan and Aviram, the sons of Eliab, and On, the son of Pelet, sons of Rehoboam, took men. And they rose up in the face of Moshe, with certain of the children of Israel, 250 men. They were the princes of the assembly, the chosen men of the assembly, men of renown. So these 250 men have quite a reputation. They're powerful leaders, probably wealthy. They probably got high intellect. They're leaders and whatnot. And so, but we need to notice in verse 2, but Korach, and Datan, and Aviram, and On, they separated themselves from Moshe. They separated themselves from him, the true leader. But in verse 1, we see that Korach is from the tribe of Levite, while Datan, Aviram, and On are of the tribe of Rehoboam. We also know that Rehoboam was Jacob's firstborn, but he lost his firstborn status to the sons of Joseph because of the sins that he committed. I won't even go into that. We also know that the firstborns have a very special status in Yahweh's eyes. And we also know that Yahweh separated the tribe of Levi unto himself to minister in the tabernacle. But here we see a special significance between the tribe of Levi, the Levites, and Reuben. The Levites replaced the firstborns as helpers for the priest, the high priest and his sons. So go back, keep your finger there, go Exodus chapter 13, verse 2. Exodus chapter 13, verse 2. Sanctify unto me all the firstborn, whatsoever opens the womb among the children of Israel, both of man and of beast, it is mine. Go down to verse 12. That you shall set apart unto me, unto Yahweh, all the opens that womb, every firstling that is a male, which you have coming of a beast, shall be Yahweh's. So here we see that Yahweh has separated all the firstborns unto himself. Go to chapter 3, Numbers chapter 3, verse 3. We'll read down to verse 13 or so. Numbers chapter 3, verse 3. These are the names of the sons of Aharon, the Kohanim that were anointed, whom he consecrated to minister in the Kohan's office. And Nadav and Abihu died before Yahweh when they offered strange fire before Yahweh in the wilderness of Sinai. And they had no children, and Eleazar and Itmar ministered in the Kohan's office in the presence of Aharon their father. And Yahweh spoke unto Moshe, saying, bring the tribe of Levi near, set them before Aharon the Kohan, that they may minister unto him. And they shall keep his charge and the charge of the whole assembly before the tent of meeting to do the service of the tabernacle. And they shall keep all the furniture of the tent of meeting, the charge of the children of Israel to do the service of the tabernacle. And he shall give the Leviim unto Aharon and to his sons that are wholly given unto him from the children of Israel. And you shall appoint Aharon and his sons that they may keep their priesthood. And the common man that draws near shall be put to death. And Yahweh spoke unto Moshe, saying, and behold, I have taken the Leviim from among the children of Israel instead of every firstborn that opens the womb among the children of Israel, and the Leviim shall be mine. For all the firstborn are mine. On the day that I smote all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, I hallowed unto me all the firstborn in Israel, both man and beast. Mine they shall be, I am Yahweh. Let's read verse 12 again. And I, behold, I have taken the Leviim from among the children of Israel instead of every firstborn that opens the womb among the children of Israel, and the Leviim shall be mine. So we read that Yahweh replaced the firstborn with the Levites. Okay. It should have been the firstborn who helped Aharon and his sons. However, Yahweh replaced them with the Levites. Now we have seen that Korach separated himself. So when we read verse 1 and 2 of chapter 16, Numbers, there's some pretty serious stuff there. In verse 2 it says, and they rose up in the face of Moshe. They just got right smack down in his face. I'm sure you've all had that happen. I've had people come smack down in my face to even take their fist and bring it down to hit me with everything they got. To get rest. I mean, we're breathing each other's breath. Okay, this is the kind of thing that's going on here. Korach separated himself, and this teaches us that Korach is separating himself versus Yahweh separating the Levites and the firstborn. So he's taking this as an opportunity, maybe as a loophole, to get rid of Moses and usurp his, and not only that, usurp Moshe, but get rid of Aaron, become the high priest.
It's a coup.
Yeah, it's kind of like a coup, but a little bit more, I would say, on the intellectual side. But he had to show force of 250 men besides those. But anyway, Korach is the firstborn, by the way. Korach is the firstborn son. Go to Exodus chapter 6, verse 21, real quick. Exodus chapter 6, verse 21. See, this ties greatly into that picture where he may have a loophole. And the sons of Korach, firstborn, okay, and Nepheg and Zikri. So Korach's the firstborn son. So he's going to leverage this whole thing in the challenge to Aaron and the priesthood and to Moses. Dangerous thing to do when you challenge Yahweh's anointed. Okay. Now, go back to Numbers chapter 16. We'll start in verse 2 and we'll go down to verse 3 real quick. And they rose up in the face of Moshe with certain of the children of Israel, 250 men. They were princes of the assembly, the chosen men of the assembly, even men of renown. And they assembled themselves together against Moshe and against Aharon, and said unto them, you take too much upon you, seeing all that the assembly are set apart, every one of them, and Yahweh is among them. Wherefore then lift up yourselves above the assembly of Yahweh. Those are dangerous words. Okay, Korach, Datan, Abiram, and On complained that Moshe and Aharon have taken way too much responsibility. That's the excuse he's going to use, right? Even though that's not true, but we have a talking point here. So far, all we know is that according to verse 3, they think Moshe and Aaron are doing way too much for the millions of people that are there. I mean, that's the excuse they're using. However, they do use the expression, wherefore then lift or exalt yourselves up above the whole congregation of Yahweh. So let's look at it kind of briefly. Think on this for a moment. Think about where they may be coming from. Whether they're coming from an honest opinion, or one that's tainted, or one that's really tainted. Okay, so let's look at it. Maybe the rebels think that Moshe and Aaron, maybe they think that they're better than everyone else. Why have I had that happen to me? I don't know how many times. You think you're so much better than everyone? No. Just teaching the truth. Okay, or number 2, maybe the rebels feel that the entire congregation has equal status before Yahweh. Therefore, they may feel that more people than just Moshe and Aaron should share the leadership role. Anyway, at this particular moment, we still don't know what their agenda is, per se. But if we notice in the middle of verse 3, that the rebels said, all the congregation are set apart. They are holy, every single one of them. Now, to be holy literally means to be set apart. It means set apart. But then we have a clue. So let's stop for just a moment. Equal, yes. There's no one above anybody, everyone else. But when Yahweh establishes a leadership role, that leadership role is supposed to be respected, honored, has value. The teacher is not above the student is not above the teacher. However, the teacher is in an exalted position more than the student. We have some very intellectual people here, very smart, very rich. That Korach, very rich. That's a whole other story. But again, to be holy literally means to be set apart. It means set apart. So there we have a clue. So they probably have an issue with someone or a group that has been set apart. Otherwise, they wouldn't say that. What they are saying is this: since the entire assembly is set apart, this person or a group of people aren't any more special than the rest of the congregation. In a sense, that's true. But if Yahweh appointed them to be leaders, then that leadership role is supposed to be honored. Yahweh chose them, not men. What the rebels said must have been very upsetting, because Moshe fell on his face in intercessory prayer on the behalf of all of Israel, because he knew trouble was coming. I mean, they just don't get right up in your face and do what they're going to do. It wasn't serious. So look at verse 4 and 5. And when Moshe heard it, he fell on his face. Okay, might want to put a little footnote there if you haven't already. When Moshe heard, he fell on his face. What this literally means is the argument is not going to go any further, because he's on his face before Yahweh. So now Yahweh is going to be the one who decides the matter. See, this is one of the things I really try to convey to people, that when something like this happens, you get on your face. Sometimes, if you got to do it right then in front of everyone, do it. This conversation is not going any farther. Father, this is into your hands. So it had been pretty serious for Moshe to get on his face, prostrate on the ground. Okay. Verse 5. And he spoke unto Korach and to all the company, saying, in the morning Yahweh will show who are his and who is set apart, and will cause him to come near unto him. Even him whom he may choose will he cause to come near unto him. So Moshe said that Yahweh would choose who was his own and who could draw near unto him. See, that's so important, because how many times, I don't know how many times over the last 60-some years that I can remember stuff like this. Thus saith the Lord. When a pastor gets up or a prophet gets up and says this or that, and that says, thus saith the Lord. Really? About 99% of the time, it's not thus saith the Lord, it's thus saith the guy who said it. Because I started checking those things out and going to scripture, almost all the time they were way off base. Okay. Therefore, Korach's complaint must have something to do with whom had been chosen to draw near to Yahweh. And we know that Yahweh specifically chose Aharon and his sons to be priests. Furthermore, they were the only ones allowed to draw near to Yahweh, especially Aaron in the Holy of Holies. This shows us that Korach has a problem with the Aaronic priesthood. He has a problem with authority. He's a firstborn. He's probably a very good-looking guy to boot. Doesn't say that, but he's probably a good-looking guy. Got lots of money. I won't go into his background, but believe me, he's a wealthy man. And apparently has a silver tongue.
For people to follow him.
Yeah. You know, in order to get 250 people to follow you. I mean, we're talking about leader. We're not talking about just an average man in the camp. We're talking about a guy who he can influence the leadership of the other people in the camp. That's a powerful thing. So let's look at verse 6. This do, take your censers, Korach, and all his company, and put fire therein, and put incense upon them before Yahweh tomorrow. And it shall be that the man whom Yahweh does choose, he shall be set apart. You take too much upon you, you sons of Levi. But Moshe gives the warning, like, you guys bit off more than you can handle. These fire pans are the same ones as the censer used to offer the incense before Yahweh. And part of the daily service of the Mishkan involved the offering of incense. And Jewish tradition tells us that this service was one of the most coveted ones to do in the temple or the tabernacle. This was the one service that the high priest was entitled to do, although if he wanted, he could allow someone else to do it, if he so chose. Also, according to, well, let's go to Leviticus chapter 16, verse 1. Leviticus chapter 16, verse 1. Okay. And Yahweh spoke unto Moshe after the death of the two sons of Aharon, when they drew near before Yahweh and died. And Yahweh said unto Moshe, speak unto Aharon your brother, that he come not at all times in the set apart place, then the veil, before the ark cover which is upon the ark, that he die not. For I appear in the cloud upon the ark cover. Herewith shall Aharon come into the set apart place, with a young bullock for a sin offering and a ram for a burnt offering. He shall put on the set apart linen tunic, and he shall have the linen breeches upon his flesh, and shall be girded with the linen girdle, and with the linen mitre shall he be attired. They are the set apart garments. And he shall bathe his flesh in water and put them on. And he shall take of the assembly of the children of Israel 2 he-goats for a sin offering, and 1 ram for a burnt offering. And Aharon shall present the bullock of the sin offering, which is for himself, and make an atonement for himself and for his house. And he shall take the 2 goats and set them before Yahweh at the door of the tent of meeting. And Aharon shall cast lots upon the 2 goats, 1 lot for Yahweh, the other lot for Azel. And Aharon shall present the goat, which the lot fell for Yahweh, and offer him for a sin offering. But the goat on which the lot fell for Azel shall be set alive to Yahweh to make atonement over him, to send him away from Azazel into the wilderness. And Aharon shall present the bullock of the sin offering, which is for himself, and shall make atonement for himself and for his house. He shall kill the bullock of the sin offering, which is for himself. And he shall take a censer full of coals of fire from off the altar before Yahweh, and his hands full of sweet incense, beaten small, and bring it within the veil. And he shall put the incense upon the fire before Yahweh, that the cloud of the incense may cover the ark cover that is upon the testimony, that he die not. Okay, we'll read it later, but right now it's important to know what's this thing about this altar of incense. Why is this one of the most coveted things for a priest to do? You don't count. Because the altar of incense, when they put the incense on it and that smoke goes up, it is representing the prayers of the people. No, I'll show you that later. It represents the prayers of the people. And so this sweet smelling aroma of the prayers coming up, that's what it represents. And so it does smell good when the priest does it, of course, but it's the deeper meaning is this is when the prayers of the people is going up. So it's a very powerful thing. And so according to what we just read, the high priest had to offer incense from his censer, from his fire pan, before entering into the Holy of Holies on the Day of Atonement. Anyway, now we see a connection between Korach's desire and the priesthood. So Moshe devised a test to determine whom Yahweh had chosen to draw near to himself in the tabernacle. Remember what happened the last time someone brought incense to Yahweh that he had not to do? Nadab and Abihu, they bit the dust. Nadab and Abihu were slain before Yahweh when they offered straying incense, flash fire before Yahweh. So obviously, Moshe knows that the consequences of failing this test probably will result in death. See, this is how serious this stuff is. Not playing games here. Moshe again makes reference to Yahweh's choice of whom has been set apart. Okay, look at chapter 16, verse 7 again. And put fire therein, put incense upon them before Yahweh tomorrow, and it shall be that the man who Yahweh doth choose, he shall be set apart. You take too much upon you, you sons of Levi. And Moshe said unto Korach, hear now, you sons of Levi, is it but a small thing unto you that the Elohim of Israel has separated you from the assembly of Israel to bring you near to himself, to do the service of the tabernacle of Yahweh, and to stand before the assembly to minister unto them? And that he hath brought you near, and all your brothers, the sons of Levi, with you, and you will seek the priesthood also? Therefore you and all your company that are gathered together against Yahweh, and as to Aharon, what is he that you murmur against him? Ouch. Now, I generally will show this every year, but it's really important. Let's go back to verse 10. And that he would brought you near, and all your brothers, the sons of Levi, with you, and will you, here's where it's interesting in the Hebrew. This is so cool. It says, Gam Kahuna. You know the big kahuna? You don't have to be a Hawaiian to know that. That's right in the Hebrew Bible. The big kahuna. That's what it says. Gam kahuna. Well, you seek the priesthood. Seek the priesthood is Gam kahuna. So he wants to be the kahuna. Poor guy. Anyway, here we have reached the heart of the matter. Moshe exposed Korach's true intentions. Korach was seeking the priesthood. He wanted to be the great kahuna. So let's ask the question here. Was Korach's desire evil? Maybe, maybe not. But we got, it's real easy to jump to conclusions, but we got to do investigations. Whether we know the guy or gal is guilty or not. We got to go through due process. Okay. If his desires is to truly draw near to Yahweh, then his eyes are heavenward, albeit extremely misguided, because the high priest can only be chosen by Yahweh himself. Man cannot choose the high priesthood. If Korach just wants the prestige and honor because of the office, then his attitude then is not heavenward. It's self-inflicted, if you will. So we see that the whole thing is about himself. And it's earthly. There's nothing heavenly about it. Just the opposite. So, does that make sense? See where we're going. Okay, look at verse 12. And Moshe sent to call Zatan and Abiram, the sons of Eliab, and they said, you got to be kidding me. We're not coming up. Well, that's not in here, but we're not going up there. Is it a small thing you have brought us up out of the land flowing with milk and honey to kill us in this wilderness? But you must needs make yourself also a prince over us. In other words, you're going to lord it over us. Verse 14. Moreover, you have not brought us into a land flowing with milk and honey, nor given us inheritance of fields or vineyards. Will you put out the eyes of these men? We will not come up. And Moshe was very wroth and said unto Yahweh, respect you not their offering. I have not taken one ass from them, neither have I hurt any of them. Let's read verse 14, the first part. Moreover, you have not brought us into a land flowing with milk and honey. Well, that's a lie. What did the spies say? Even the ones that said we can't take the land, but they did say the land is truly flowing with milk and honey. And look at how big the grapes were they brought back. So right off the bat, we got a problem. Spies said the land was flowing with milk and honey. Moshe specifically says for Dathan and Abiram. So here we see another issue. It's more than just the issue over the high priesthood. Look carefully at the statement made by Dathan and Abiram. Number one, they are upset. They are upset that Moshe took them from land flowing with milk and honey. And note that they twisted the phrase, a land flowing with milk and honey, but they applied it to Egypt.
Yeah, Egypt wasn't flowing.
No. I'm sure those bricks are pretty hard. Okay. Number two, they don't want to die in the wilderness. They forgot what Yahweh promised them. Number three, they don't like Moshe's leadership. Number four, they want land and inheritance. They want vineyards yesterday or now. You know? Okay. Number five, they accuse Moshe of harming them and stealing from them. They accuse Moshe of stealing from them and poking their eyes out. They don't obey. I mean, where'd they get that?
Yeah.
These men aren't so much interested in the priesthood as they're living the life of Riley. Remember that show, Life of Riley? Anyway, they are more interested in enjoying the good life. The Dathan and Abiram seem to be concerned with the earthly matters. But now we see two distinct groups of dissenters. Two groups of dissenters. Group one consists of Korach, who seeks the high priesthood. Group two consists of Dathan and Abiram, who are looking for the good life on earth. Two different groups with two different agendas, yet they look up, but they all hook up for one unholy rebellion. So they join together in the rebellion. Kind of like in the Arab world, you have your different factions in the Arab world. They're always fighting among one another. But if an outsider steps in, they all gang up together on the outsider. Then they get rid of the outsider, and they go back to doing their nitpicking thing against each other. That's what's going on here. In other words, Korach and his followers seek the high priesthood, so they have a problem with Aharon. And since Abiram and Dathan seek the good life, they have a problem with Moshe's leadership. So, here's another question. Are Dathan, Abiram's desires, are they evil? I would say, yes, they are. They are simply interested in fulfilling their fleshly desires of amassing wealth and enjoying pleasure. Verse 16. And Moshe said unto Korach, be you and all the assembly before Yahweh, you and they and Aharon tomorrow. And take you every man his fire pan, put incense upon them, and bring you before Yahweh, every man his fire pan, 250 fire pans. You also, and Aharon, each his fire pan. And they took every man his fire pan, put fire in them, and it had laid incense thereon, and stood at the door of the tent of meeting with Moshe and Aharon. And Korach assembled the assembly against them to the door of the tent of meeting, and the glory of Yahweh appeared unto all the assembly. Okay, now we're back to Korach. In fact, the Torah will continue then to bounce back and forth between the two rebellions. It'll bounce back and forth a little bit. There are two separate groups of dissenters here, each with their own agenda. Yeah, Yahweh chooses their stories simultaneously at the same time. Why? Because both are in rebellion. Both are liars. They have different agendas, but obviously they don't believe the creator of the universe. They don't trust what he says. They don't believe what he says. Okay, let's go down to verse 20. We're down to the end of the chapter there. And Yahweh spoke unto Moshe, saying unto Aaron, saying, separate yourself from among the assembly, this assembly, that I may consume them in a moment. And they fell upon their faces and said, O Elohim, the spirits of all flesh, shall one man sin, and will you be wroth with the whole assembly? And Yahweh spoke unto Moshe, saying, speak unto the assembly, saying, get you up about the dwelling of Korach, Datan, and Abiram. And Moshe rose up to Datan and Abiram, the elders of Israel followed him. And he spoke unto the assembly, saying, depart, I pray you, from the tents of these wicked men, and touch nothing of theirs, lest you be swept away in all their sins. So they got them up unto the dwelling of Korach, Datan, Abiram on every side. And Datan and Abiram came out and stood at the door of their tents with their wives, their sons, and their little ones. And Moshe said, hereby you shall know that Yahweh has sent me to do all these works, and that I have not done them of my own mind. If these men die the common death of all men, and be visited after the visitation of men, then Yahweh has not sent me. But if Yahweh make a new thing, and the earth open her mouth and swallow them up with all that appertain unto them, and they go down alive into Sheol, then you shall understand that these men have despised Yahweh. It came to pass, as he made an end of speaking all these words, that the earth did cleave asunder that was under them, and the earth opened her mouth and swallowed them up, and their households, all the men that appertained unto Korach, and all their goods. So they and all that appertained to them went down alive into Sheol, and the earth closed upon them, and they perished from among the assembly. And all Israel that were round about them fled at the cry of them, for they said, thus the earth swallow us up. And fire came forth from Yahweh and devoured the 250 men that offered the incense. There is stuff when you despise
That's not
the creator of the universe. On an upbeat note here for just a moment, do you know that Korach's sons wrote some of the most impressive psalms in all of the scripture? They saw what their father did, understood. And they wrote some very impressive psalms. But we see that the judgment on Datan Abiram was linked to their agenda. It was linked to their agenda. They had carnal, earthly desires, and therefore the earth destroyed them by swallowing them up. The 250 followers of Korach were also linked to their agenda by a judgment from heaven. They may have had heavenly aspirations, although they were misguided. See those 250 men? They weren't quite as rebellious and despising as Korach. So they might have thought, well, they're sincere, but you can be sincerely wrong. You know what I'm saying? That will describe many of what's Christianity today in this world. A lot of them are very sincere, but they're very sincerely wrong. So these guys were misguided. And the source of their judgment, fire from Yahweh, had its source also from heaven. Came from heaven. We can now see the connection between Abihu and Korach's 250 followers. Both groups were destroyed by fire from Yahweh because they offered strange incense before Yahweh. In other words, the same sin resulted in the same judgment. The same sin resulted in the same judgment.
Yep.
You're going to see that so much in the book of Revelation. In fact, the book of Revelation covers some of the stuff that we're just talking about. Now, let's see. Let's go to, well, let's read verse 35 again. And the fire came from Yahweh and devoured the 250 men that offered the incense. And English Bible, it'll continue on going down. In the Hebrew Bible, it'll start in chapter 17, verse 1. And so verse 35 and verse 36, then in the English Bible, then Yahweh spoke unto Moshe, saying, speak unto Eleazar, the son of Aharon the Cohen, that he take up the fire pans out of the burning and scatter you the fire yonder, for they are become set apart. Even the fire pans of these men who have sinned at the cost of their lives, let them be made beaten plates for a covering of the altar, for they are become set apart, because they are offered before Yahweh, that they might be a sign of the children of Israel. And Eleazar the Cohen took the brazen fire pans which they were burnt, had offered, and they beat them out of for a covering of the altar, to be a memorial of the children of Israel, to the end that no common man that is not of the seed of Aaron draw near to burn incense before Yahweh, that he fare not as Korach and as his company, as Yahweh spoke unto him by the hand of Moshe. So that's kind of a sobering thing, of a reminder, take the fire pans. And so every time the priest would look at that and going, I'm not making that mistake. Moshe, you're the boss here. And continue reading. Verse 41, chapter 17, verse 6 in Hebrew. But on the morrow, all the assembly of the children of Israel murmured against Moshe. What? But on the morrow, all the assembly of the children of Israel murmured. Boy, their memories aren't even short. They murmured against Moshe and Aaron, saying, you have killed the people of Yahweh. What? Moshe is really good. He's got the power to make the earthquake and open up and swallow these guys. And he called fire down from heaven. I don't think so. People were offended. Okay. Anyways, let's keep reading. You have killed the people of Yahweh. And it came to pass when the assembly was assembled against Moshe and against Aaron, and they looked toward the tent of meeting, and behold, the cloud covered it, and the glory of Yahweh appeared, and Moshe and Aaron came to the front of the tent of meeting. And Yahweh spoke unto Moshe, saying, get you up from among this assembly, that I may consume them in a moment. And they fell upon their faces. And Moshe said unto Aaron, take your fire pan, put fire therein from off the altar, and lay incense thereon, and carry it quickly unto the assembly, and make an atonement for them. For there is wrath gone out from Yahweh, the plague is begun. I'm going to stop for just a moment. You'd have thought the people would have learned their lesson, because they know good and well that Moshe and Aaron did not cause the earthquake for the fire to come down. They all saw it. And they, I'm sure, could have seen Moses standing off over there, and his eyes just as big as everyone else's. He was not in control. He was their leader, but not in control. And so the wrath of the plague has begun. Okay, let's continue reading. And Aharon took as Moshe spoke and ran into the midst of the assembly, and behold, the plague was begun among the people. And he put on the incense and made atonement for the people. And he stood between the dead and the living, and the plague was stayed. Stop a moment. We don't know how far he had to run, but he had to run a long ways. Get ahead of this thing. Now that they died by the plague were, wow, 14,700, besides them that died about the matter of Korach. And Aharon returned unto Moshe unto the door of the tent of meeting, and the plague was stayed.
Can I just say something quickly?
Sure.
Where it says, and Moshe fell on his face.
Yes.
He was interceding. Once again, here's the fourth time he's interceding for these people who are trying, who are treating him awful. Intercession is really important.
He had probably a pretty flat nose when it was all said and done. After all the time he fell on his face before the people, before the Lord. Okay. So, I mean, there's some serious stuff going on here. As long as Israel functioned under the heavenly calling, did I say the heavenly calling? The heavenly calling of Aharon as high priest, things went well for them. Korach's rebellion was a total disregard for the Aharonic high priesthood. Yahweh has consistently tried numerous times to show Israel that because of his holiness, his set apartness, no one can approach him apart from the mediation through the priesthood. There's a set order here how things to be done. By not recognizing Aharon's high priestly authority, the people have circumvented his ability to mediate on their behalf. That's why Moshe said, brother, put some incense on that fire pan. You got a race to win here. Because the slower you go, more people are going to die. Faster you run, the less people will die. Still 14,700 died. The result then is death. Death and more death. It's a serious thing. The plague is a perfect picture of what waits Israel if they do not draw near to him by the proper means through the mediation of the priesthood. Kind of the same today. All around the world, there are many quote unquote Christian organizations that bypass the priesthood, go to Yahweh directly without a mediator. And in some circles, they have Mary as a mediator between that and Yeshua or Jesus. Or sometimes it's just Mary and between Mary and Yahweh. Well, I'm going to skip chapter 17 just for a moment, so bear with me. Go to chapter 18. There's a major scene change here. It seems as though Yahweh switched to a totally different subject. Oftentimes, Yahweh gets two seemingly unrelated passages next to each other. It's like, really? What's going on here? But he does this to show us that two passages are actually related. You just got to know how to study it and read it and see what's actually going on. And one way to do this is to see the words and the phrases or even the concepts that are commonly used in each passage that seems to be different from one another. For instance, in Numbers chapter 16 through 18, we see the word set apart or holy used 10 times. 3 times in chapter 16 and 17, 7 times in chapter 18. The word near or come near is found 6 times in chapter 16 through 17. And the similar phrase, joined unto you, is found twice, chapter 18. So look at chapter 18, verse 2. Numbers chapter 18, verse 2. And your brothers also, the tribe of Levi, the tribe of your father, bring you near. Okay? Bring you near. They're joined unto you, with you, that you may be joined unto you and minister unto you and your son with you before being before the tent of the testimony. Look at verse 4. And they shall be joined unto you. Keep the charge of the tent of meeting, whatsoever the service of the tent may be, but a common man shall not draw near unto you. So join together, and the word phrase draw near or come near or nigh unto you is also, in verse 4 and verse 3. We just read both of them. Okay. But look at Numbers, let's see, chapter 18, verse 7. Numbers 18, verse 7. And you and your sons with you shall keep your priesthood and everything that pertains to the altar, and to that within the veil, and you shall serve. I give you the priesthood as a service of a gift, and the common man that draweth near shall be put to death. And look at verse 22. And henceforth the children of Israel shall not come near the tent of meeting, lest they bear sin and die. Now the word choose is used twice in Numbers chapter 16 and verse 17. Let's go look. Chapter 16, verse 7. Numbers chapter 16, verse 7. Remember the word choose. And put fire therein, put incense upon them before Yahweh tomorrow, and it shall be that the man whom Yahweh does choose he shall be set apart. You take too much on you, you son of Levi. Chapter 17, verse 5. Be verse 20 in Hebrew. English chapter 17, verse 5. It shall come to pass that the man whom I shall choose, his rod shall bud, and I will make to cease from me the murmurings of the children of Israel, which they murmur against you. And the similar word is taken the word taken in chapter 18, verse 6. And I, behold, I have taken your brothers, taken. These are all the same concepts in the two chapters. The word chosen, once in chapter 16, verse 5. In other words, according to Korach and all of Israel, may perform the functions of the priesthood. You see, only Aharon and his sons and the Levites may draw near to perform these priestly functions. So look at, again, chapter 18, verse 4. And they shall be joined unto you, and shall keep the charge of the tent of meeting, whatsoever the service of the tent may be, but a common man shall not draw near unto you. Verse 7. You and your sons with you shall keep your priesthood and everything that pertains to the altar and to that which within the veil, and you shall serve. And I give you the priesthood as a service of gift, and the common man that draws near shall be put to death. Verse 22. And henceforth the children of Israel shall not come near the tent of meeting, lest they bear sin and die. But the Leviim alone shall do the service of the tent of meeting, and they shall bear their iniquity. It shall be a statute forever throughout your generations, and among the children of Israel they shall have no inheritance. So then, by comparing concepts, words, and phrases, we can see how chapters 16 and 17 and 18, they're actually connected together. Very connected. Mm-hmm. Chapters 16 and 17 represent an aberration. It's a time in the lives of Israel when they have rejected the mediation of the high priesthood. That's today is on a grand scale. They're rejecting Yeshua. They're accepting a false Messiah. And the list is growing by large numbers daily. But the result was death back then. Book of Revelation gives not a pretty picture. of the same scenario. Numbers chapter 18 basically puts things back in order. It does this by reminding Israel that they must approach him through the mediation efforts of Aharon and the Levites. Numbers 18 just reestablished the priesthood. Numbers chapter 18, all it does is reestablish the priesthood. Hopefully, instructions of Numbers 18 will remind Israel that they never want to approach Yahweh apart from the mediation through the Aharonic priesthood and the Levites. This is a great picture of you don't want to depart from the mediation that Yeshua does, that he does for us, to the Father, in mediating. That's why, remember, Moses in the wilderness, he sees the burning bush and, wow, what's that? And who spoke from the bush? The mediator. Remember that? We should give you a handout and showed you in Hebrew the word mediator. The mediator spoke from the bush.
Yeshua.
That's right, way back then, even before them. These people are doing the same thing. Anyway, the death associates with Numbers 16 through 18 will be averted if they approach through Yahweh's choice of Aharon and the Levites. Okay, Numbers chapter 17. Let's go to Numbers chapter back to 17. And in Hebrew Bible, going to be verse 16. Let's read down to verse 16. So Numbers chapter 17, verse 1, and the Hebrew Bible is chapter 16. 17:16. And Yahweh spoke unto Moshe, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel, and take of them rods, one for each father's house of all their princes, according to their father's houses, 12 rods. You shall write every man's name upon that rod. And you shall write Aharon's name upon the rod of Levi, for there shall be one rod for the head of their father's house. And you shall lay them up in the tent of meeting before the testimony where I meet with you. And it shall come to pass that the man whom I shall choose, his rod shall bud, and I will make to cease from me the murmurings of the children of Israel, which they murmur against you. And Moshe spoke unto the children of Israel, and all the princes gave him the rod for each prince one, according to their fathers' houses, even 12 rods, and the rod of Aharon was among their rods. And Moshe laid up the rods before Yahweh in the tent of the testimony. And it came to pass on the morrow that Moshe went into the tent of the testimony, and behold, the rod of Aharon for the house of Levi was budded, and put forth buds, and bloomed blossoms, and bore ripe almonds. And Moshe brought out all the rods from before Yahweh unto the children of Israel, and they looked. They took every man his rod. And Yahweh said unto Moshe, Put back the rod of Aharon before the testimony to be kept there, for a token against the rebellious children, that there may be made an end of the murmurings against me, that they die not. Thus did Moshe, as Aharon commanded him, so did he. And the children of Israel spoke unto Moshe, saying, Behold, we perish, we are undone, we are all undone. Everyone that comes near unto the tabernacle of Yahweh is to die. Shall we wholly perish? Wow. By causing Aharon's rod to blossom, bear fruit, Yahweh demonstrated to Israel that the priesthood belonged only to Aharon. Each rod was a piece of wood. When Aaron's rod budded, blossomed, or ripe fruit, life came forth from that which was dead. A dead piece of wood brought forth life. A dead branch came to life. And remember that Yeshua is called the branch, right? So go to Jeremiah chapter 23, verse 5. Jeremiah 23, verse 5. Jeremiah chapter 23, verse 5. Behold, the days come, says Yahweh, that will raise up unto David a righteous shoot, and he shall reign as a king and prosper, and shall execute justice and righteousness into the land. Go to chapter 33, verse 15. Jeremiah 33, verse 15. In those days and at that time, I will cause the shoot of righteousness to grow into David, and he shall execute justice and righteousness in the land. Zechariah chapter 3, verse 8. Zechariah chapter 3, verse 8. Zechariah 3, verse 8. Hear now, O Yahushua, the Kohen Gadol, you and your fellows that sit before you, for they are men that are assigned. For behold, I will bring forth my servant, the shoot. Whatever. All those words that we've been talking about shoot should be capitalized. If they're not, because it's,
Messiah.
yeah, about the Messiah. Chapter 6, verse 12. Zechariah chapter 6, verse 12. And speak unto them, saying, thus speaks Yahweh Zebaoth, saying, behold, a man whose name is the shoot, and who shall shoot up out of his place and build the temple of Yahweh. And so there's nothing old about the Old Testament, if you will. Anyway, going back to Numbers chapter 17, verse 1 and 2. Again, that'd be verse 16, 17 in the Hebrew Bible. And Yahweh spoke unto Moshe, saying, speak unto the children of Israel, and take them rods, one for each father's house, of all their princes, according to their father's house, 12 rods. You shall write every man's name upon his rod. So Yahweh purposed this exercise specifically to show Israel whom he had chosen to be the high priest. Therefore, by understanding the branch, understanding the almonds, it is teaching us that Yeshua is the high priest.
Amen. Yeah.
One of the main points in the story of Korach's rebellion that those who minister before Yahweh must be chosen by him. No one can take this responsibility upon him or herself. Korach learned this lesson the hard way. Go to Hebrews chapter 5, verse 1. Hebrews chapter 5, verse 1. Hebrews 5, verse 1. For every Kohen Gadol chosen from the sons of men is appointed of the sons of man by Hashem. This is the word which may offer offerings and sacrifices for sins, who also rejects to bear upon himself those in whom there is no understanding of heart, and in whom there is confusion. After that, he who also his body is diminished by weakness. Therefore, he also, for the sake of the people, made an offering for sins. And there is not one who, by the hand of man, takes to himself to be placed as the firstborn. For if he is called and chosen from Elohim, he is like Aharon. And therefore also the Messiah did not glorify himself to become Goen Gadol, but according to he who said to him, you are my son, this day I have begotten you. And who also says in another place, you are a Cohen forever after the order of Melchizedek. And it came to pass in the prayers of the days of his flesh and his deliverance with a great cry to him and offering tears and first fruits of sorrow and prayer till this one that's able to deliver him from death. And also having heard by the piety of both the Son and Elohim. Although he was the Son of Elohim, he learned from those things which he suffered to work his ministry by will. And being perfected in all the ways by perfection, he became the cause of the life of the world to come, who was called by Elohim Kohen Gadol, according to the order of Melchizedek. Anyway, we'll stop right there. Let's go back to verse 4 again. And there's not one who by the hand of man takes to himself to be placed as the firstborn, for he is called and chosen from Elohim, is like Aharon. This verse states that no human can take upon himself the honor of the high priest. Can't do it. Doesn't matter how good looking you are, or how much money you have, or what kind of car you drive. And this is exactly what Korach was trying to do, although he didn't drive a car. Let me see here. I'm looking at something. I think I'm gonna skip down. Okay. What was the most important event in the history of Israel that gave such prominence to the status of the firstborn? The Passover, when the lives of the firstborn were spared. Right? Let's go to Numbers chapter 8. Numbers chapter 8, verse 14. Thus shall you separate the Leviim from among the children of Israel, and the Leviim shall be mine. And after that shall the Leviim go in to do the service of the tent of meeting, and you shall cleanse them and offer them for a wave offering. For they are wholly given unto me from among the children of Israel, instead of all that opens the womb, even the firstborn of all the children of Israel have I taken them unto me. For all the firstborn among the children of Israel are mine, both man and beast. On the day that I smote all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, I sanctified them for myself. And I have taken the Leviim instead of all the firstborn from among the children of Israel, and I have given the Leviim as a gift. They are given to Aharon, to his sons, from among the children of Israel, to do the service of the children of Israel in the tent of meeting, and to make atonement for the children of Israel, that there be no plague among the children of Israel, through the children of Israel, coming near unto the sanctuary. Yahweh specifically stated that he set the firstborn apart at Passover. So what happened at Passover was the firstborn's lives were spared, were they not? They would have died if they had not applied the blood of the lamb to the doorposts. The sign of the Messiah as life from the dead. Go to Acts chapter 13, verse 32. Acts chapter 13, verse 32. And also, behold, we declare to you that the promise that was to our fathers, behold, Eloah has fulfilled it to us, their sons. And he raised up Yeshua, like it was written in the second Psalm, you are my son, this day I have begotten you. Luke stated that the phrase, today I have begotten you, in Psalm 2, verse 7, pertained to Yeshua's resurrection from the dead. Okay? Yeah. Now, let's go to Revelation chapter 1, verse 5. Revelation chapter 1. verse 5. The revelation of Yeshua the Messiah. This is the very first verse that I'm going to read, verse 5. Messiah and Eloah gave to him to show to his servants what must happen soon. And he made this known when he sent it through his angel to his servant Yochanan. Now, verse 5. And from Yeshua the Messiah, the faithful witness, the firstborn of the dead, and the ruler of the kings of the earth, who loved us and released us from our sins by his blood. This all connects us to Psalm chapter 2, verse 7, and Acts chapter 13, verse 33. Revelation 1:5 states that Yeshua's firstborn status refers to his resurrection. He was the first one to be reborn from the dead. And this is linked to Psalm 2, verse 7, because Luke stated Psalm 2, verse 7 referred to Yeshua's resurrection. So let's go to Psalm chapter 2, verse 7. Let's go there. Psalm chapter 2, verse 7. Psalm chapter 2, verse 7. Why don't we start verse 1? Psalm chapter 2, verse 1. Why are the nations in an uproar? And why do the peoples mutter in vain? The kings of the earth stand up and the rulers take counsel together against Yahweh, against his anointed. Let us break their bands asunder and cast away their cord from us. He that sits in heaven laughs. Yahweh has them in derision. Then will he speak unto them in his wrath and affright them in his sore displeasure. Truly it is I that have established my king upon Zion, my set apart mountain. Tell them, I will tell of the decree. Yahweh said unto me, you are my son. This day I have begotten you. Boy, that should speak volumes. That should speak volumes. Okay. I'm gonna skip some more things here. Let's go to Proverbs 30, verse 4. Proverbs chapter 30, verse 4. Who has ascended up into heaven and descended? Who has gathered the wind in his fist? Who has bound the waters in his garment? Who has established all the ends of the earth? What is his name and what is the son's name, if you know it?
Hallelujah.
So you're supposed to know their names. I guarantee you'll never find the word Jesus in the Old Testament. What is his name and what is his son's name, if you tell me? Do you know of a father and a son whom it can be asked who has descended, and established the ends of the earth? Surely you know him. Who was it that first descended? Let's go to John chapter 6, verse 51. John chapter 6. Verse 51. I am the bread of life, because I descended from heaven. And if anyone should eat of this bread, he will live forever. And the bread that I will give you is my body that I gave for the life of the world. So who was it the first descended from heaven? As a prophet to speak the words of the renewed covenant?
Yeshua.
That's right, Yeshua. Surely you know him. Who was it that after redeeming us with his blood and ascended back to heaven, became our high priest? Right? Surely you know him. And whom are we waiting to descend? Let's go to Revelation chapter 19, verse 11. Revelation chapter 19. Verse 11. And I saw heaven open, and behold, I saw a white horse, and he who sat upon it was called Faithful and True, and Righteousness he judges and makes war. Wow.
Yes, you are.
Let's keep reading. And his eyes were like a flame of fire, on his head were many diadems, and he had a name written on him that no one knew except himself. And he was clothed with a garment dipped in blood, and his name was the word of Eloah. And the armies in heaven followed him upon white horses, clothed with fine linen, white and pure. And from their mouths a sharp sword came out, by which they might kill the nations. And he will rule them with a rod of iron, and he will tread the winepress of the wrath of Eloah Almighty. Let's read verse 16. And he had a name written on his garments, on his thighs, King of Kings and Master of Masters. When we get to that portion in the book of Revelation, we'll go much deeper than this.
Yeah.
Okay, so gotta bear with me for a while. We'll get there. So whom are we waiting to descend and again to reign as King of Kings and Master of Masters?
Yes, you are.
Surely you know him.
Yes, you are.
The people back then did. Some of them didn't. They knew who he was. Let's go to John chapter 3, verse 13. John 3:13. John chapter 3, verse 13. And no man has ascended into heaven, but he who descended from heaven, the Son of Man, who is in heaven. Wow. Listen, folks, when Korach decided that anyone should be able to approach Yahweh without a covering, he was saying, I don't want that covering that you've provided as we come to you into your presence. Furthermore, I disregarded your choice of Aharon as mediator. We know that the Aharonic high priesthood was a picture of Yeshua's high priesthood. And we know that Yahweh's choice of Aharon as high priest was a picture of his choice of Yeshua as the high priest. Therefore, if we look at Korach, look at his actions on a messianic level, he was essentially saying this: I don't want that covering that you've provided through Yeshua's intercession as I come into your presence. Furthermore, I disregard your choice of Yeshua as mediator between Yahweh and man. That's what Korach was doing. And that's serious business. Now, see why death occurs so swiftly to those guys? We can only approach Yahweh through his son. Go to 1 Timothy chapter 2, verse 5. 1 Timothy chapter 2, verse 5. First Timothy chapter 2, verse 5. For Eloah is one, and the mediator of Eloah and the sons of men is one, the Son of Man, Yeshua, the Messiah. Just as Moshe is the mediator between Yahweh and Israel, Moshe then is a prophetic picture of the Messiah who would and is a mediator between Yahweh and all of Israel. Okay, now let's go to Revelation chapter 8. Revelation chapter 8, verse 1. What's interesting is this is all about chapter 17 of Numbers. Revelation chapter 8 is about Numbers chapter 17. And when he opened the seventh seal, there was silence in heaven for about half an hour. And I saw 7 angels who were standing before Eloah, with 7 shoparim were given to them. And another angel came and stood by the altar, and he had a censer of gold, and much of incense was given to him that he might offer the prayers of all the set apart ones on the altar that is before the throne. See, right there, the altar of incense is associated with the prayers of the people.
Right.
Okay, verse 4. And the smoke of the incense went up with the prayers of set apart ones from the hand of the angel before Eloah. And the angel took the censer, filled it from the fire that was on the altar, and he cast it onto the earth. And there were thunders and noises and lightnings and tremblings of the earth. And the 7 angels who had 7 shoparim prepared themselves to sound. Okay, we'll stop right there. Remember Aaron? He had to take the censer and run ahead and get a hold ahead of the plague, and the plague stopped. Here's the same thing right here. This is why the book of Revelation, brethren, is a culmination of the first 5 books, then all the rest of the books from there to the book of Revelation. And the angel took the censer and filled it from the fire that is on the altar, and he cast it on the earth. Why? Because if he didn't, every single person would have died.
Wow.
There would have been no judgment of the sheep and goats when Yeshua would return. So this is the whole picture of back in Numbers of what happened with Aaron and stayed the plague. So we have the angel who cast that altar of incense, the fire pan, onto the earth, because at this point in time, there's still a lot of people come to know the Lord during this time, spared their lives. Otherwise, they would have died. Listen, folks, we are living in a world that Yahweh is getting very angry about, and there's soon coming judgment, major time. If we as a community are a part of the factor that brought disobedience, there will be judgment. If we are doing Korach and the rest of the crew, what they did, there's going to be serious judgment on this earth. If Yahweh wants to exercise his judgment, he has that right to do so. He has the right to judge the whole city, the whole state, the whole nation, the whole world. And we know that rebellion is a sin unto death. It's also the same as witchcraft. We won't turn there, but the 1 Samuel 15:23. Rebellion is a sin of witchcraft. And stubbornness is as the same as iniquity and adultery. What does it mean that he cast down this fire pan to the earth? There's going to be a lot of earthquakes. Going to swallow up a lot of people, just like it did Korach and company. Exact same pattern that the Numbers will follow the book of Revelation.
Wow.
And the book of Exodus and the book of Genesis, the book of Leviticus and Deuteronomy. You have to go back to the book of Numbers again, because after the judgment, what happened after Korach? Something else happened to the censer at Wahron. We just saw the earth swallow them up as in a great big earthquake, right? The people grumbled against Aharon and Moshe again, said, it's you who caused the death of all these people. Remember, it's going to get so bad during the tribulation period, people are going to blame God for it all. And boy, are they going to wish they had never said that. Why did they say that? That isn't true. But the whole congregation wanted to believe it. They wanted to believe that was Moses' fault.
So then it wouldn't be their fault.
The people approached the tent of meeting in a very, they need to approach it in a very cautious manner. Earlier in the Torah, Yahweh said that if you ever approach the tent of meeting in a contentious manner, and that self-same day, you will die. You must come into my house in a quiet and reverent way. But death had begun. And the traditional teaching is that Aharon had to run really hard to chase the line of death and get ahead of it to stop the plague, as we read earlier. The Bible said he had to run. Moses said, Aaron, this is going to be the hardest, fastest race you ever have to do. 14,700 more people died before the plague stopped. The right censer carried by the right person stopped the plague of death. 250 people died the day before.
Mhm.
The censer that was cast down in the book of Revelation to the earth to stop the plague, just like Aaron did. The test and the great tribulation will be the same as it was in the wilderness, verbatim, only on a grander scale. And we need to be very careful about what to do with Yahweh's anointed, about the past, but also about the promises that Yahweh gave. Whenever Yahweh anoints a person, or has that person to be a teacher and a leader of the truth, people need to be careful what they say about that leader. Will not bode well. But Yahweh's promises are pretty amazing. From 2000 and 2005, when you go to Israel, go down the southern part, there's an area called Gush Katif. It comprises 21 beautiful towns, 36 elegant synagogues. In fact, 70% of the entire organically grown agriculture of the whole state of Israel, 60% of all herbs grown in Israel, and it's actually the most important security buffer that southern Israel has. Through those 5 years, it withstood, by the grace of Elohim, miraculously close to 6,000 rocket attacks in 5 years, without serious damage. That's just from the Jerusalem Post. Well, since then, there's been many more than that.
Mhm.
The next 18 years. And it's still ongoing. But God has protected those regions. Likewise, that censer was not cast down in the book of Revelation. It'd be awful, because everyone would have died.
Mhm.
I think we'll close with that. I got other things I could say, but I think we'll just close that out in prayer. We're living in serious times, more serious than most people would understand or even recognize. We have this month called Gay Pride Month. Drag shows are everywhere, in churches,
Church.
even in Montana and Billings are doing it. So, brethren, we need to be careful of what our Heavenly Father says in His Word. We better take Him at His word. We better believe His word. We better understand that He's serious. And when She'll come back, not come back as a happy camper. I'll tell you that. So let's pray. Abba, Father, we just thank you that you do not lie. You are not a man that lies. Father, may we take your word seriously, both the good stuff and the bad stuff. I don't know how much longer, Father, that your patience is going to run. One day, the mercy and grace that you have will be diminished greatly. But there's still time. Father, to be witnesses to those who have an ear to hear, that they can come to know Yeshua as their Messiah and their mediator. We know, Father, just we don't even have to turn the news off for 5 minutes to see the turmoil this whole world is in, let alone our own towns, our own cities, and the areas where we live. We know that many people on the inside are nervous, they're anxious, they're scared, and many of those do not know you. They do not know your Son. They help us, Father, to be ministers of your word for the time that we have left. May we be a bright spot in someone's life. Maybe we can help somebody become a someone. Give us words to say, Father, when we meet with our family, to be able to spread the good news to them. Give us the words to say to our friends, our neighbors, in a way that they would think, well, that makes sense. Tell me more. May we have that ready answer for those with a question. Father, right now, I continue to lift up the needs of the brethren. And I continue to pray, Father, you give them their heart's desire. In Yeshua's name I pray. Amen and amen. And the Father bless you all.
Bless you.
And we'll see you in about an hour for the revelation.
No, I was writing on the